This is Trending Tuesday of the Chili Wolfpack podcast. I am your host, Ian Wolf, and I'd like to start off with a PSA saying that it's 10:43 p.m. on a Monday night here. I'm grinding this out, recording it, so I can schedule it for 5 a.m. tomorrow, so it's ready for all of you on Tuesday morning. And my day has consisted of about 8 hours of work and about 5 hours of research and preparation for this podcast. I'm not making a dime off of any content that I'm publishing on social media, but I do this because I have a passion for talking about real stuff, for bringing people closer to our Savior Jesus Christ, for helping everyone become a little more aware of what's really going on in our world, telling you things that mainstream media will probably not tell you things that popular figures such as professional athletes and politicians will not tell you. I just want to have real talk. And if you guys could do something such as just follow the podcast on Spotify, or shout me out on your socials, or share this podcast with a couple of family members or friends or coworkers, if you guys could just do something to support me, that would mean a lot to me. Full transparency, there have been times where I've even considered quitting just because I'm 21 years old. I'm in the stage of my life where I'm trying to figure out what my life will look like. I need to make money, and something such as this podcast could involve a lot of preparation. It's very, very time consuming. And I've questioned, like, how fruitful is this? Is it worth the time and energy that goes into it when no money is being made off of it? So while that's not the number one goal, I mean, it's not at all. That's not why I started this, and that's not why I'm continuing to. Another thought as well, I could have some other side hustles or side jobs to make that extra needed income, especially with the way the economy and inflation is going. I mean, we could branch off into a few different sectors there. But anywho, let's get into our quote of the day from St. Dominic. A man who governs his passions is master of his world. We must either command them or be enslaved by them. It is better to be a hammer than an anvil. And I'd like to begin our first topic of Trending Tuesday by telling a story. So this morning I go to this lumber yard. For those of you that don't know, I am building a house with my grandfather. That is my job. He pays me for that. That's what I'm currently doing. It's new, never done anything like handyman or trades related before. I grew up playing sports, played college baseball. Last year I was a middle school para. Now I'm doing construction. New experience. I'm enjoying it. I can't say I burn with passion for it, but I enjoy it. Anyways, so I take his truck. I go to the lumber yard. I have to pick up 16 sheets of like real thin plywood. So I'm helping a worker there load them up into the back of the tailgate of the truck, and I could just tell like he was very, very like smooth and efficient and quick. You know, he's trying to get this loaded up so he can help the next. And I made a comment like, man, it looks like you know your way around or something like that, just complimenting how efficient and quick he was at his job. And he was like, yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years and I probably got another 30 left before I can retire. And I go, holy smokes. He goes, yeah, sir, let me get this straight. You've been working for 20 years and you won't be able to retire for roughly another 30? You're not even halfway done. He's like, yeah. I was like, why is that? Is that inflation? I mean, he's like, yeah, it's inflation. And then you have like Medicaid and Social Security, the cuts that are being made to that. And he said something else about like the retirement program within his company or something along those lines. But it was very alarming to me because I'm thinking, without knowing much about him or his job, I would estimate he's making at least $40 an hour. And so for him to have worked for 20 years, now I know he didn't start at 40 an hour, but I'm sure he's making at least 40 an hour. And for him to have to work at least another 30 years, I mean, he's going to be over 70 years old by the time that he's able to retire. That's ridiculous. And I talked about this on a previous episode of the Chili Wolfpack podcast, was how the average age of retirement, folks, is raising higher and higher. The average age of retirement is raising. That is not a good thing. That means people have to work longer before they can retire. I believe that you should grind your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, maybe your 50s. But I'd say for most people, by the time you get to your 60s, you should be ready to retire. And for those of you that are fortunate to be able to retire in your 40s or 50s, fantastic. But for the average American, if you can make it through your 50s and then somewhere in your 60s, I believe everyone should be able to retire, or at least no longer have to work full time. And so I pose this question, right? When you're 65 years old, would you rather be working 40 plus hours a week to make a monthly payment, or when you're 65 years old, would you rather be able to invest your time fully and freely into your kids, your grandkids, your local church or ministry, the community, some hobbies, traveling, you name it? Nothing wrong with that. If you expect your life to just be that when you're 35, well, realistically speaking, no, you need to work. But like by the time I'm 65, I want to be able to enjoy some of the fruits of my labor. I have no issue working hard now. When I'm 65, I want to be retired. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to have to be working when I'm 75 years old. And unfortunately, that's a scary direction that we're going down. As the gap between the wealthy elites and the middle and lower class, as that gap continues to widen and increase, it's like that upper echelon is becoming more and more untouchable, so to speak. The super wealthy. So that's a little story. Moving on here. A U.S. Army sergeant allegedly shot and wounded, yes, Army sergeant shot and wounded 5 fellow soldiers at Fort Stewart, Georgia on Wednesday. The suspect, a 28-year-old automated logistics sergeant with no combat history, reportedly used his personal handgun. Law enforcement was dispatched to the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area at 10:56 a.m., and the base was locked down. The suspect was taken into custody almost an hour later. 3 of the wounded required surgery, but all are in stable condition and expected to recover. So yeah, like, as of now, they say there's no, like, motive found. Did the guy just completely lose it or what? All right, we're going to go down a rabbit hole here just briefly and then move on. If you have not seen the movie Manchurian Candidate, I highly encourage you to watch the movie Manchurian Candidate. That is Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington. Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington. I'm not saying that this situation is a Manchurian Candidate. Probably not. But it just reminded me of it. Manchurian Candidate. If I could sum it up real quickly, I would say that it is essentially how the U.S. government used foreign wars as a guise for like mind control and manipulation and pushing their own personal agendas. So in the movie, these soldiers, they're overseas somewhere in the Middle East, and these U.S. soldiers are taken to this base, but there's this mind control program taking place. And so all of these soldiers are hooked up to these machines, and there's these like hypnotists and, mind control programs taking place, and false memories are being inserted into their minds. False memories are being inserted into their minds. They're being brainwashed. They're being manipulated. And then it shows how a couple of the soldiers kill their fellow soldiers because they were like brainwashed to do so. They didn't want to, but it's like they were in a trance. And the puppet masters like manipulated them into killing their fellow soldiers. And then there was fake news sent back home, and it was this like noble story about how these two guys, they died they died a noble cause while they were in combat, blah blah blah. But it was like, no, there's a whole MK Ultra program, so to speak, going on, and their fellow soldiers were brainwashed into killing them. Like, just crazy stuff. And like that's a whole rabbit hole. I'm sure I have your attention a little bit. I don't think I'm a lunatic for saying that. That's not something you're going to hear on your local news station, but do some research on that, on MK Ultra and Manchurian Candidate. So let's move on to some scripture, huh? Even in the most structured and disciplined places in the world, sin and brokenness and their painful consequences are still present. But Christians can find hope in the promise that one day the consequences of brokenness will be no more and all will be made right. From Revelation chapter 21, verse 4, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Grief, crying, and pain will be no more, because the previous things have passed away. Next up, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is canceling nearly $500 million in federal funding for mRNA vaccine research. Kennedy says mRNA vaccines, which can be developed faster than traditional vaccines, Kennedy says they are ineffective and announced funding will shift towards safer, broader vaccine platforms. Critics say that mRNA technology is essential for national security, delivering safe, scalable vaccines in record time. However, Kennedy says, Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, also known as BARDA, will scrap or throw away 22 mRNA vaccine developmental instruments. Kennedy claims the data shows, quote, these vaccines fail to protect effectively against upper respiratory infections like COVID and flu. Folks, we've heard both sides, whether you're pro or anti-vax, whether or not you've been vaccinated, what you think about the whole COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions, and whether or not the vaccines were safe or things of that nature. This is not an episode where we're going to dive into that, but this is just what's going on for your information. Next, U.S. Transportation Secretary and interim NASA Secretary Sean Duffy has confirmed the space agency has fast-tracked plans to operate a small modular reactor on the moon by the first quarter of 2030. The moon, 2030. Now, here's what's strange, is that the Trump administration announced cuts by 24% to NASA's budget in 2026. But here they are, making plans to go to the moon in 2030. Now, scientists are also concerned that this is a politically motivated move with the new international race to the moon. This race is with China and Russia. China and Russia also have plans and ambitions to get to the moon as well. Now, we'll get into this here in a second. Things get a little spicy with this new race to the moon. Dr. Simeon Barber, planetary science specialist at the Open University, Dr. Simeon Barber says, quote, if you build a nuclear reactor or any kind of base on the moon, you can then start claiming that you have a safety zone around it because you have equipment there. I'm going to repeat that quote. If you build a nuclear reactor or any kind of base on the moon, you can then start claiming that you have a safety zone around it because you have equipment there. Dr. Barber also says, quote, to some people, this is tantamount to, we own this bit of the moon. We're going to operate here and you can't come in. So, in simple terms, with this race to the moon, we could see problems because It seems as if multiple countries here, potentially the US, China, and Russia for sure, they want to build bases of some sort on the moon for whatever purposes. And that could be very territorial. So on Earth, we have territories. We have cities that have city lines. We have states that have lines. We have countries that have lines, borders, territories. What we could see here in the future is territories on the moon. And to be honest, like personally, I have no idea what that would look like, but that is it's a thought, possibly a concern that Dr. Barber, among others, have. Let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 through 2 for this. First of all, then, I urge that petitions, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for everyone, for kings and all those who are in authority, so that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. Linda Yaccarino, the ex-CEO who stepped down from Elon Musk's social media platform a month ago, Yaccarino is now taking the top job at a Miami-based digital health platform, which is focused on GLP-1 weight loss drugs. The Miami-based eMed Population Health, which calls itself, quote, the leading digital health platform for GLP-1 and GIP population health management, focuses on drugs like Wegovy and Ozempic. Prior to Twitter and X, Yaccarino was chairman of global advertising and partnerships at NBC Universal, and she spent 20 years in ad sales and marketing for roles at Turner. Investors have been pouring money into the precious metals ETFs this year at a rapid clip. Nearly $21 billion have been flowing into U.S. domiciled products since July. Now, to be clear here, we're talking about gold in particular. Lots of investments going into gold, ladies and gentlemen. Why? First off, the price of gold is up this year by 29%. This quote comes from Brian Armour, Director of ETF and Passive Strategies Research for North America at Morningstar Research Services. From Brian Armour, says, quote, gold's a speculative asset, so the main driver of price and interest is the safe haven demand amid geopolitical and economic uncertainty. So assets such as gold and silver can be a very valuable investment and resource because no matter what happens to, say, the US dollar, gold and silver is still going to be there as a source of currency, as a source of bartering. Things such as cryptocurrency are really beginning to take off here. And we're seeing the potential for cryptocurrency. It appears as if Congress is trying to pass some legislation to regulate and bring in cryptocurrency. But whether or not cryptocurrency is reliable, same thing. Gold and silver, it's reliable. It's valuable. So whatever happens to the US dollar, to any sort of currency, and whether or not cryptocurrency can be relied upon, gold and silver, it's a very safe investment asset, whether it's you put part of your retirement into there or it's just, an investment that you can flip later. Yeah. From Proverbs chapter 11, verse 28, anyone trusting in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like foliage. Apple launched Answers, Knowledge, and Information, also known as AKI, a new team building a ChatGPT-style answer engine for Siri, Spotlight, and Safari. Instead of linking to websites, it will give direct answers to user questions. Your questions stay completely private while getting ChatGPT-level responses. The first version is expected to make an appearance by the spring of 2026. likely starting with Apple support before expanding to Siri. Quote here from Matthew chapter 6, verses 8 through 13. Your Father knows the things you need before you ask him. Therefore, you should pray like this. Our Father in heaven, your name be honored as holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Amen. And for our good news story of the day, folks, woo! The first female ump is on deck for the regular season. Major League Baseball is promoting Jen Powell to work the bases on Saturday's Marlins-Braves doubleheader and call the balls and strikes for Sunday's game. Powell has steadily been climbing the ranks since her pro umpiring career began in the rookie leagues of 2016. So shout out for Miss Jen Powell and all women worldwide. We're seeing progression here for women getting into men's sports. A few years ago, the San Antonio Spurs, their assistant coach, I'm blanking on her name, but she was the first women's sports coach. We have women's NBA referees. Women have made appearances in other men's sports, but that's awesome. That's awesome. So Major League Baseball has the first female umpire, and this is huge. And she's a trailblazer. She's the first one. Surely we will see more over the next decade, and that's awesome. So to end Trending Tuesday, we'll go to Psalm chapter 46, verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a helper who was always found in times of trouble. All right, well, there you have it. Trending Tuesday on the Chili Wolf Pack podcast. I'm your host, Ian Wolf. Comments, suggestions, please let me know. Quick note that I'd like to add. If you would like to make a guest appearance on the Chili Wolf Pack podcast, let me know. Reach out to me. You can find me on socials at IanWolf81. My email is in the about description of the podcast. You can reach out to me there as well. You can also comment on a post. But I am looking to have a guest on the podcast at least once a week where we could talk about anything and everything from sports to your faith to politics, the economy, to your hobbies, to, anything and everything. We can prepare the conversation or we can freestyle right off the dome. But it's a great place for us to find common ground, differences, and for you to share your testimony. So if you'd like to make an appearance on the Chili Wolf Pack podcast, hit me up, and there you have it.